Hello, welcome back to the show. World War II Books, Where to Start. I'm Vasily Grossman, sitting here on the roadside making a journal entry on my way to Berlin. But in the meantime, I like to sit here and talk to you about a couple books. So let's get into it. Let's do Fritz Vs Ivan, The Lives of the Ordinary Soldiers of Both Sides of the Titanic Struggle on the Eastern Front. When I ran across these two books on the cover today, I initially thought of something similar to The Life of Johnny Reb and The Life of Billy Yank by Bell Wiley from way back in the mid-20th century. Gritty stuff in the trenches, in the camps, how they live their daily lives in the Army, the Union, and the Confederacy. And in one of these respects, I did find what I was expecting to find or looking for, and the other I didn't. So first up is Hitler's Soldiers, the German Army of the Third Reich by Ben Shepard from 2016 to the tune of 536 pages, main body text. That was supposed to be Hitler's Soldiers. The common grunt, the Fritz in the trenches, it's really not. It's not so much a bait and switch as a bad title. But for name brand appeal, if you put Hitler's name on anything, Hitler's cookbook, Hitler's rocking chair, Hitler's soldiers, Hitler's U-boats, it will sell better than the German army and the common soldier experience in World War II. Yeah, plain and simple. Can't hate them for that. I just feel like I got misled. So it's really a kind of a top-down, generic, strategic look at the German army organization, resilience, treatment of populations under their control during occupation, treatment of partisans, some treatment of POWs in the Soviet Union, kind of a mishmash here and there, along with some analysis and criticism of particular general officers, Rommel and Kesselring standing out there. It's not so much a recitation of set-piece battles, the big names, Normandy, Stalingrad, Leningrad, Kursk, as overall bits and pieces of various actions here and there. Some of the big names are mentioned, but he's kind of got a different focus. He kind of, which I appreciate in some senses and some not, but he does have a good focus on the Africa Corps and Rommel. He's not too fond of Rommel, thinks he's more of an opportunist and a career advancer than a all-time brilliant strategist. The legend of Rommel goes on, but if you look at his real achievements in the desert, okay, buddy got his butt kicked out of Africa and achieved nothing in the long run for the German Reich except contribute to a huge drain of prisoners that they could not afford to lose in 1943 after Hitler said, yeah, I'm all in on this after all. I'll shove all my chips down here. So another 300,000 men gone. You could kind of lay that at the feet of Rommel to the degree of his bombast and his big-headed personality and glory-seeking in the drive to the Suez Canal that never did come off. You could also lay it at the feet of Hitler, though, for not committing adequate forces to achieve a goal. Shoring up the Italians does nothing to advance the agenda of the Axis. If you're going to go in to North Africa, you better go in with both feet. Hitler didn't until it was too late. So there's some blame to throw on both parties there. Rommel's personality stands out, though, as more the driver than anything else. He finally lit Hitler's fire to where Hitler said, yeah, this is kind of prestige, and I hold on to all ground I take. So kind of lay it there at Rommel's feet, if you will. There's a lot of focus on Rommel and Kesselring, as not being a brilliant strategist or a great defender either. He pretty much comes down on the side of anybody with a general officer's experience defending Italy should have been able to do what Kesselring did, considering the Allies' blunders and in their drive up the Italian boot rather than end around amphibious operations. Anybody could have done that job, he says. Why give Kesselring special accolades? He also points out that Kesselring kind of got off the hook in the war crimes trials. He could have been easily executed for his retaliation measures when German officers or soldiers were killed. He retaliated in kind with the 10, 50, 100 people killed, hostages killed at a time for reprisals. And, of course, some roundup and execution of Jews too, but Kesselring kind of came off scot-free with a minimal sentence after the war. So he kind of says Kesselring is really not the saint or the good German that you might think he is. Rethink it. Interesting. Okay, cool enough. But as far as Fritz in the trenches, it's more like I took pictures of an atrocity today. We hung a partisan. Here's the photos. I'm sending them home. that kind of level of detail. It's really not about the camaraderie or the tactics or the training or the endurance of the German soldier. So it really is just kind of blah blah strategic overview. Now, he is a good writer. He's not a good storyteller. This is really not a story arc here. This is just really good, solid writing. The photo section is really good. I was impressed by it. Not the standard iconic photos you might expect. Kind of more plain Jane stuff, but good stuff. And the appendices are actually useful. Man, that's kind of rare. So overall, 3 stars. Switching gears over to Ivan's side, we have Ivan's War, Life and Death in the Red Army, 39 to 45 by Catherine Meridale. This is a little bit further back from the year 2000, 388 pages, main body text. And this is more what I thought it would be. This is in the trenches, in the camps, in the front lines with Ivan. And she's careful to go back to the Revolution to cover the state of war that most of these guys that served in World War II understood as their entire framework of life. The revolution was struggle and violence and battle, and the revolution didn't really end. That's the whole thing about communist and totalitarian societies. They keep churning that grist, right? They keep churning it up. Nothing is ever settled. The revolutions go on as a means of terror and population control. So she starts there and goes through the terror famine. And a lot of these guys that served in the Red Army experienced the Ukraine famine firsthand or secondhand. Nobody was unaware of it. And they also had the legacy in 1937 to deal with mentally as they're still in this totalitarian, oppressive, repressive society. They're drafted, they volunteer for patriotism after the German attack in 1941. And they know that their own side is they're aware that their men are just as murderous as the Germans are. And if any little misstep can cause them to be yanked off to the camps or executed on the spot. And they have to endure that. There's no such thing as cowardice in the Red Army, or you're shot. No such thing as being out of place where you're not supposed to do it without papers, or you're shot. Everyone does their duty, no matter how outrageous that duty is. No matter how terrified you are, you do it. So she recounts the lack of reporting of mental breakdowns and no such thing as shell shock. You just had to grit your teeth and do the job. Even going, she goes down to the detail. The Russians didn't wear socks. They had valenki, I think the word was, foot wrappings. Kind of medieval stuff, but they wrapped their feet in these things as opposed to Western civilization-style socks. And just the peasants that can't read, the fourth-grade educations, the university students from the city, they're kind of the Soviet kind of version of a melting pot. All of that gets mixed in. She does it very well. She's centered around Kursk. I think she must have worked there at the university or been connected to Kursk somehow, although she's English, but she was apparently living in Russia when she did these interviews for this book. So she focuses on the Kursk region, and that's kind of refreshing instead of Moscow or Leningrad or Stalingrad. It's kind of refreshing. So there's some centerpieces about the Kursk battle itself and the clearing out of the civilian population as the Soviets are laying all the minefields and setting their tank traps and their infantry ambush points. That is pretty interesting. And also the liberation, if you will, from the Germans of the Kursk region. When the Red Army goes back in there, all the collaborators are kind of scurrying for cover, or the women who had babies with Germans, willingly or unwillingly. She mentions bastard babies thrown in ditches and left to starve to death because there's just not enough food. It's a war zone, and you don't want to get caught with a bastard baby because it's death for you too. The reprisals for collaboration are brutal. So you hide what you can and hope no one else tattles on you, which is probably a vain hope in the Soviet Russia, right? Denunciations of your neighbors, family, local bigwigs are standard issue and are expected, required. That's part of the functionality of the communist regime. Denunciations are a requirement of society. So these women who ditched these babies in the trenches probably didn't get away with what they were hoping to get away with, which would be their lives and nothing else. At any rate, it's pretty gritty, nasty, down-to-earth, real, and she doesn't shy away from the horror part of the story. And she mentions the disappointment of going to Western Europe in 45 and seeing everything that the capitalist society has had and wondering why these clowns invaded their country when they had next to nothing compared to Western Europe. All the luxuries of modern 20th century life, indoor plumbing, gas stoves, comfortable apartments, not exposed to the elements, streets, motor cars, traffic lights, electricity. Most of these peasants from Russia had never experienced electricity, believe it or not, for lighting indoor buildings. It's a fact. So they were the shock and dismay of going into these Western countries and realizing there's no reason. There couldn't have been any possible reason to invade the Soviet Union. It is kind of nice to read about. And she will go over the rape thing extensively. Not for the shock and horror of it, but just the Soviet soldiers' feelings about why they did it and how many may have participated and their thoughts about it afterwards, if they had any thoughts. And most of them don't. Like, it happened. So what? Decades later, it didn't matter to them. So overall, much better than the first book, Hitler's Soldiers. The photo sections is not a photo section. The photos are scattered throughout the book, and they are low-key, undramatic stuff. There are no iconic photos here at all. Very low-key, soldiers behind the line stuff. A couple civilian shots, and a couple shots of hanged Soviet partisans by the Germans. What you expect. Photos are well done. Her writing is superior to Ben Shepherd's. She is more of a storyteller and more empathic to the Soviet soldiers' lives and experiences. So I think overall she's a better quality writer. They're both good, but I would say Ivan's War is superior. So that's Fritz versus Ivan today. This would be like a first dive for me. I'd like to get something else to compare and contrast, especially on the German side. But I think these are two good starter volumes here for your reading about World War II. So I hope one of these or both of these are to your taste or excite your interest a little bit. And until next time, I'm Vasily Grossman, writing away and hoping my novels don't get censored after the war. Until next time, happy reading.